Hey, Nige, you there?
I am, mate. But you probably can't see me, eh?
You got it in one. No worries.
I might stop the video and start again. You obviously hearing me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you. Oh, something's happening.
Yeah, I've just stopped the video then. Now I'll start it. Oh, I know why. That might help.
Look at you, mate. Look at you.
Oh, been down the mountain this morning.
Talk me through what I'm looking at, please.
So this is the national dress here at the moment.
Really? Wow.
So, and it's getting bloody hot, I'll tell you. Hang on.
You can hardly breathe.
Yes, there you go. Is that better?
Even better, yeah.
We've we went on the slidey slopes this morning. We just put these up.
You got a lot of snow there still, have you?
We have. Sorry, 2 ticks. I'm just trying to do too many things at once.
No
where's it going?
Because obviously it's 21st of Feb here. When do your ski slopes all melt down? What's
Well, actually, just.
Okay.
So no, we've had a couple of good weeks of snow. So we're actually we're well in the middle of winter. February's the coldest month.
Wow. Okay. So how cold are we talking?
Still happening for us. Well, down here, I reckon the rest of the country probably just cock a snook at sunny Toronto, because we've had a few days that have been -10 to -15.
Okay.
But they had a charity ice hockey match in Alberta a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Where they play outdoors for as long as possible to raise as much money as they can for breast cancer this year.
Yeah.
And they played for, I think it was 250 hours non-stop.
What?
And the temperature was, they'd actually had an exceptional cold snap. So the temperature was like, with wind chill, was -48. So, unbelievable, eh? So all the pucks were shattering when they hit the ice because they were just frozen, and all the sticks were breaking. What? It was just mind-blowing.
They must be can't be the same team. Are they subbing people on? What?
Yeah, I think they must. It's a bit like when they have all these community all-in football matches, from one end of town to the other.
Okay.
I think the whole of the town actually gets involved and does their bit, but unbelievable. So, no, it's not been that cold here.
Yeah. Wow. Gosh.
We have had really good dumps of snow actually in the last couple of weeks. So we've got about, 3 or 4 foot outside.
Have you?
Yeah, because we haven't touched it. We were out yesterday, just scrubbing around up in the escarpment. Seth's not far off Claire's height now. I don't know what he'd be. He'd be over 5 foot easy.
Oh, is he? Yeah.
And he was up to his waist in it.
Really? Because is he 10?
9.
9.
He was just 9 10 days ago.
Okay. What he clocked? Okay.
Mm.
Hey. Does he like the snow? Because
he does. Yeah, he does pretty well. To be fair, he doesn't. He does every now and again when he's not dressed up for it. When he sort of rushes and doesn't get all his stuff on, he'll complain about cold hands and things. But he's a fairly go-getter sort of guy. So no, he's adapted pretty well. He got a swag of ice hockey stuff for his birthday. So he's now got a stick and a puck and some skates and some gloves. Wow. So he actually gets into it. Apparently he did quite well. So we're going to try and sign him up for a team in the next few weeks, because it'll still be going. Everything's just opening up here. So we're just getting to that point now. Yeah, because of the COVID thing.
Okay. Okay.
Better.
You've got Leeds Rhinos there, mate. They can't be wearing that where you are, surely. What's that about?
Oh yeah, Leeds Rhinos. Yes. Yeah. When I bought this, the what they called the Wolfpack, the Toronto team, was still in the Super League.
Oh, okay.
So I was half hoping that we'd catch some games, but then they went bust, I think.
Oh, right, did they?
They had an Aussie owner, which probably
An
says
Aussie
a bit.
owner. Well,
Yeah.
you know, what do you expect?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What more can you say?
Oh, good stuff.
How are you?
Right.
How's your
Yeah,
dad?
pretty well. Yeah. Well, we had funny, nothing like you guys, but we had a bit of snow. Did I send you the photo? We
Yes. The ice house looked amazing. How'd you make that?
Yeah. Well, you kind of get those little plastic storage boxes and just pack it tight, and then just flip it up.
Right.
You got a brick, and then you kind of just go and just kind of make it.
Okay.
Yeah, it took a few hours, but
I reckon that was an unbelievable effort. Shout Claire, she was really impressed.
Well, it was actually on a neighbour's bit of land because they couldn't clear their drive, and so we sort of went up to give them a hand. But then we thought, oh, let's make it fun as well. So that was good last weekend.
That was unbelievable. They do this similar sort of thing here. They have machines that make ice blocks. So they basically make igloos in their front yard when it's really snowy.
Oh man!
And of course the kids camp out, and it's good.
Love it. It's so nice. It's so good.
You got to learn that bit.
Wow. So how are you doing, mate? How are you? How are things?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
A good mixture. It's got us challenged. There's lots of good things. Don't get us wrong, but I would still say even without the pandemic, we'd have had our challenges. I was talking to a mate in Gove in the Territory, so just across from Darwin yesterday.
Okay.
And just reflecting with him about, I've almost come full circle in a lot of ways. I feel like now, once again, I'm building up the practice.
Yeah.
But in a very different environment to the UK. Like when I first had a practice in the UK 28 years ago, which scared me.
In Wakefield, is that right?
Yeah, that's right, down in Wakey. There's obviously a lot of startup, but in Canada and the same in Australia, you really have to sell yourself. So you're a private business person, you live and die by your own sword. You basically put yourself out there, sense the competition. It's a very different environment to the UK NHS, where you're much better supported, I must say, but you're regulated. Whereas, in a very private practice model, which Canada and Australia have, you're more independent, but then of course you're more vulnerable.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And aside from all that, I think I'm still pretty comfortable with where we've ended up. It's a brand new practice in beautiful new premises, bankrolled by a high quality, professorial, hyper specialized eye surgeon.
Wow. Okay.
Who basically he's a great fella actually. He's Saudi Arabian, I think. Initially, he has his prayer rooms in the whole complex. He's very orthodox.
Wow. But
he's also very Canadian in terms of their assimilation and their tolerance is probably the wrong word of all cultures imaginable is really quite eye-opening. Really? How they actually just the receptionist group, for example, most of them are South American,
really?
From all over the continent. I haven't really encountered South Americans too much, but they're a great bunch of people. They work hard, they're loud, they're buoyant, and then the eye staff, most of them are Filipinos, apart from a Swedish guy who is always good for a good crack, and except as a Tottenham supporter, but we'll leave that be.
Wow.
And a Mancunian woman who's really loves to be everyone's mother, whether you want her to be your mother or not, you know, sort of, yeah. So you can go to her if you need her, but so it's, you know, in terms of a multicultural organisation, there is the support there. But then going back to the UK analogy, I'm still very much the family physician, building up my own practice, attracting my own patients. I've got a big marketing team, which sort of gives an idea of the balance of priorities. You know, the recruitment is all about marketing interns. They have 4 or 5 of them, but they basically run the whole show. Practice manager went off on maternity leave and they elected not to replace her. So we've got lots of young marketing students who are great with ideas, but are a bit slack with organisation and understanding, I think, sort of patient expectations. So what I end up doing is it's in a fairly well-to-do area of South Toronto. People are migrating out of the city into this part of the world. So the patients themselves have quite high expectations that they're really good people, but they're a different generation to the marketing guys. So I actually spend a lot of my time trying to marry those 2 expectations together.
Yeah.
The marketing guys want all the patients to give Google reviews and jump onto Facebook and all this sort of stuff. And what the patients want, because you don't see much of it here, they actually want continuity of care. And they want family-orientated medicine rather than just the one-stop shop walk through urgent care stuff that most of this country, well, this part of the country's healthcare is based on.
Really?
So it's been that's been the challenging thing, you know, is just bringing together all those expectations in a different context, you know. Very different to what it was like in the UK all those years ago, except that you still need to attract a patient load. And thankfully we're doing that because the competition's not great because, and again, this is something that's probably to most UK GPs is really quite, must be very surprising. The majority of the local family physicians shut last year. Like, that was it. It was too risky to have patients through their single person office doors.
Because of COVID, yeah.
Because of the pandemic. So they just shut.
Really?
Now, business-wise, I don't know how they sustain that. I think many practices here are pretty well off, and they probably had quite a treasure chest. But the number of patients that have come to me is that I just can't get hold of my family physician. I can't find a GP anywhere because they're all shut. They're not seeing patients. They don't return my calls. Occasionally you'll get some sort of communication. But, you know, in terms of the, I don't know, the professional responsibility for looking after your patient load doesn't happen here. Similar to Australia. It doesn't happen in Australia. It took me a long time to get my head around that. Patients are very much their own, responsible for their own. Wow. And they will, therefore, they can be peripatetic and they can oscillate around practices. They sort of perceive, oh, I need a bit of healthcare, or this isn't right. Let's go find somewhere to fix it up.
They've got to take themselves.
Yeah, that's right.
Whereas in New Zealand, it was a little bit more akin to the UK model. Is that right?
The New Zealand thing, you had the greater magnet of part capitation. So a patient could, even in a fee-paying system, a patient would get a better deal and recognised also that they got better healthcare if they went to the practice they were registered and aligned with. So the advantage to a patient in New Zealand was that they had much cheaper healthcare if they went to the practice they were registered at. But they could still go elsewhere. But what that then leads to is that there's practitioners that actually like that system because it allows them to practice what we would call general practice and the continuity of care. So practitioners would align themselves to a practice, and they would continue to see patients as necessary, follow-ups, whole demographics, age range, la-di-da. And the patients would then recognise, oh, look, we've got a practitioner who cares for us here, and the relationship would be solved. Whereas in Australia and Canada, there's no incentive to a patient. The patient could go, certainly in Australia, a patient could go and find what's called a bulk billing practice, where they basically don't have any upfront costs. And when they perceived they had a need, then they would go ahead and book into that practice. But on the other hand, if their practice, as we did in Darwin, charged fairly substantially, then that would be a disincentive to many patients to follow up.
Yeah, okay, right.
And of course, a disincentive for those that were disadvantaged. Whereas in Canada, it's actually all free. So in some respects, you've got the best of both worlds. So the patients have freedom to attend wherever and whenever, but the Ontario Health Plan, OHIP it's called, will reimburse the practitioner for whatever service you deliver. So it's actually a good model from a business perspective if there's the demand.
Yeah.
But it's very much left to the patient. So then it comes down to, well, patients have this almost autonomous responsibility to go and get some healthcare, which is great if they're switched on and engaged and motivated, but not if they're not.
Yeah.
And then you end up with quite a diverse system. It's really been, when we left, and I know I'm banging on a bit, but rabbiting on, but when we left Australia in 2017, I really wanted just to see, amongst other things, see cultures and countries and travel, but just to see how other health systems worked. And it's absolutely ticked that box, even already coming here through the UK and through Australia and New Zealand, 4 very different models.
Yeah.
None of them are perfect, but there's bits and bats that you can pick out of each. It's been fascinating, actually.
Wow. What would you say has gone really well so far, or anything you've sort of thought you're liking in Canada, proud of?
I think where I've ended up practicing, we've started to get around a bit more and get a sense of some of the other opportunities that I did have, and I think where I've ended up is great in terms of the location, but also the clientele and the patients and the practice, because despite what I just said, I'm pretty supported. I've negotiated a 6-month salary, which is pretty unusual. Like most practitioners, you'll get a percentage of what you make, which of course then is dependent entirely on who comes through your door.
Yeah. Okay.
So the practice itself is great. The neighbourhood where we live is great, especially for young kids.
You look like you're quite near to the lake in Ontario, is that right? Sort of
half
an hour or
we
something?
are.
I couldn't quite,
You're right, and I would have said that 4 months ago, but what the map somehow seems to underestimate is the distance between places here.
Okay.
There are similarities to Australia, but you can still sense it's bigger than Australia, which is saying something.
Wow.
And when a place is bigger, it just has room, and there's this factor called creep. So, what might look on the map to be a smallish town, and Oakville, we were thinking, well, I wonder what sort of facilities they have in Oakville. Oakville's got 190,000 people, and then we're the next city along in Burlington. We're about 5 k's away. Okay. We've got 185,000 people. And then 10 k's down the road is Hamilton. There's 500,000 people.
Wow.
It's the population density in a small area is huge, and therefore what might look on the map to be pretty close to the water, we're actually quite a long way away. I can't see me commuting on a bike, even if it does, or when it does get warmer. It's just too far. It's really quite, it's weird.
How far?
But what was that?
How far are you from home, work from home? The commute.
We're about 15 minutes on the freeway.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Which is nothing. It's actually very convenient, and that's one of the other things. There's a big contrast between the city and the rest of Canada, but the city is, you know, there's 5 lanes of freeway in both directions. They have fast lanes. I mean, we're sitting driving on the other side of the car, which I've just got used to.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
But on the fast lane, which is on the left for us, is you basically pay your toll for the year.
Oh wow!
So not many people use it. So not that we use it either, but you get a few people go hooting past. Just to get past what is normally gridlock of 5 lanes of motorway, freeway. The public transport's not great. They've got a 10-year plan and they'll get there, possibly. But in terms of getting around the place, it's a challenge. And that's even with the pandemic, it'll only get busier and busier. So, you know, actually getting places isn't that easy until we get out in the bush. And then there's an immediate contrast where, you know, there's no one around, there's a lot of snow, there's a lot of forest, there's a lot of space.
Yeah.
So yeah,
you've got to know what you're doing in the outdoors a bit, I guess.
A little bit, although it is pretty well set up, I must say. You know, the facilities and the services are good, very good, because I guess they care about it. But there's also, it's a well-resourced and invested country. It's, you know, just going back to what we were talking about contrasts. Actually, our pharmacist at the practice, she knows New Zealand pretty well, and she made the very outspoken comment that, because she knew we'd been in New Zealand, and she said, New Zealand, it's beautiful, isn't it? Everyone knows New Zealand's beautiful, but it's really primitive. And I thought, oh, okay. But when you think about it, it is actually it's in a bit of a time warp, New Zealand.
Okay.
And by that, it's able to preserve things. But then contrasting that with Canada, which has the same natural beauty, they also still have the infrastructure and the resources to, it's less raw and less rugged, the beauty. So, you know, there's actually a story in the press in the week. We, as I went out for a walk yesterday, and I keep telling Seth's my birthday in a couple of weeks, or in a month or so. And
your birthday?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What can I get you for your birthday, Dale? What can I get you for your birthday? And I thought about it, and I said, I'll tell you what, son, I think I've got all the kit that I need for being outdoors in the Canadian winter. But one thing I can really do with is a willy warmer. And of course, he loved it. So that's his mission the next month, is go and find me a willy warmer, because every time you're out in the bush, you need a pee every half an hour.
Okay.
So the moral of my story was they had a big long drop at the place where we were yesterday. You know, long drop, Danny?
As in, yeah, for a number 1 or 2?
Yeah, whatever you need, you know, whatever you choose. Yeah. And there was the story about this woman who was out in the bush in British Columbia 10 days ago, and she was sat on the long drop. In Australia, you worry about snakes, but in this long drop, she was tickled on the backside by a bear's nose.
No.
Yeah. Hey, I don't know what I'd do, mate. Because bears run after you, snakes don't. So this bear, I mean, you don't really want to think about what it was paddling around in, but the bear was down the bottom of the long drop and stuck its nose up in the middle of this poor old lady's number 2. She was out of there.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I'm not going to get you a present just like that, mate, but maybe something, you know, on the outdoor. But yeah, I'll let your son do the personal.
You probably wouldn't know what my size is, so
no.
I'll leave it with Seth, eh?
Good lad. Good man. And the family good? Seth and Claire, how are they?
Yeah, that's been one of the challenges. They're good. And it sort of goes back a little bit to what I was saying. One of the things, one of our good English friends who's been out in British Columbia for 10 years said this to us.
Yeah.
His quote was, and this was just about the time that Claire had all that business with her work.
Yeah. Trying to get work, basically.
Trying to get work. His reflection was, he loves Canada. There's so much to like about Canada. But geez, every now and again, they can be really unprofessional without really knowing it. And we can't quite work out why. So, you know, Claire's had 2 or 3 good opportunities. She's had instances where she's got to 2nd and 3rd interviews and has been promised to meet the team and la-di-da. And one, she got to the point of, yes, we can offer you the role. We'll just get some references over the weekend.
Yeah.
And then they came back to her on the Monday and said, no, we're not going to extend it anymore. We're not going to extend the role. She knows what her references are. She's been using them for 10 years.
So they're good.
And it's just that, I mean, the technicalities is that they use scoring charts. And they don't really take much subjective or qualitative notice of a reference. It's very much about how you actually score. And their parameters, I guess their normal distribution is very different to an Australian one, for example, which is where a lot of Claire's referees came from, or a New Zealand one.
Yeah.
So where an Australian or a New Zealander might mark 7 out of 10 for something, you know, as a good or good stroke, very good.
Yeah.
The Canadians, that's not, they need everything up the other end.
Wow.
It's false, you know, it can lead to, you know, it can lead to the wrong motivations. It can lead to people getting references for tick box references, really. Yeah. So she had that experience where basically she was offered a role, and then 3 or 4 days later they withdrew it. And that was upsetting for all of us. You know, we were pretty mad, but we also were puzzled. You know, we didn't understand that. So we're still sort of on the rebound from that. She's looking at a couple of others, but the turnaround time is very slow. So she's battling with work and needing work. Yeah. And we've only just gone back into in-person schooling. So Seth's been at home ever since Christmas until last week.
Okay.
And then, of course, the first day back, and they do have them, the first day back was a snow day. It was the first one they've had all year, but it was, I think we had 25 centimetres, and it was minus, what was it, minus? I think it was minus 23 with the wind chill. So they said that's a snow day. So they kept them home, the buggers. Need to toughen up, eh?
Wow, even in Canada. That's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. That's right. It's the beanies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, indoors. Yeah.
So apart from that, yeah, you know, you asked what the good things, where we live, the work, and the challenges are really around schooling to some extent for Seth. Compared to the UK, you know, this is another great insight. The academic quality and standard of schooling in England stands out of the 4 countries that Seth's been to.
Oh, really? Yeah.
He has now he's actually been to school in 4 different countries, and he's only just over 9. That's got its pros and cons, but he's been in year 3 years in a row now.
I see.
And that's a bit of a challenge, especially for a guy who he's a bright spark intellectually, but he's not a self-starter. So, you know, he needs direction and he needs assistance to keep the mind on the job, you know?
Yeah.
So that's been a challenge, and comparing the education systems, you know, the rigidity to some extent, and the academic targets and goals in the UK, they suit some kids. They didn't particularly suit Seth, but you can see that what he learned and what his cousins learn is very different to what they learn here. Okay. But, you know, again, going back to the mate that's been here a while, he's got a guy who's 14, 15 now, and despite what a traditionally British educated person might think, they do come out of it with success. You know, the people who they live in the community, they are self-assured and self-confident. They're flexible. They're good people. But the academic side of things, it's very different. It's fascinating again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh well, I'm pleased that he's you know, loving the outdoors at least, and I know he's a physical guy, isn't he?
He is. Yeah.
And that'll
and the sports clubs open up they opened up this weekend. So as I say, we're going to get him in an ice hockey club.
That's fantastic.
We're going to get him in a swim club once we get a drill to bore through the ice. We'll put him in the water.
That's great.
And then we'll start some football in April, apparently. So, yeah.
When you say football in that accent, what are we talking?
We're talking round ball world game, mate. Always football.
Good lad. Okay, nice one.
Yeah.
Nice.
Proper football.
Yeah.
None of this soccer.
Oh yeah, exactly.
So yeah, well,
what's is COVID? What's happening there for you guys with all of that side of things?
Good question, actually. It's I think I'll still stand by this statement. I made the statement about a month ago to a lot of people in the UK that it is just the same here, but about 6 weeks behind. And I think that still applies. They're a very compliant population. They're very nice, polite people here.
Okay.
But they're easily spooked, and the media is uncomfortable, almost hysterical about it. You know, the numbers are not the UK numbers, but at the same time, you know, it's unacceptable to be having death rates and incidence rates to that degree.
Yeah.
But it worries them, and therefore they tend to oscillate between knee-jerk reactions one way and another. Okay. So we've had a long lockdown for quite small numbers, and I just wonder, you know, I do wonder how effective it's been. The public health here, it's disappointed me. It's not dissimilar to the UK. It really hasn't been able to manage things in a public health perspective, testing and tracing. You know, it just doesn't happen. It's another. Claire and I were talking about it this morning. It's another reflection of federalism, and again, that's in the UK. We're pretty strong with regulation and you know, in some respects, top-down organisation and management. But when you live in a country like here and like Australia, where there's a federal government and there are then provincial and state governments, invariably, even for the important stuff, it ends up being a cost-shifting and a blame-shifting context. And the vaccinations is the prime example here. Canada's, it's a bit part player in some respects. The states aren't letting them have much. Right. And we're on the end of the supply chain from Europe. Okay. And the stories we get here is, you know, when Pfizer changes its plant around and its production drops, Canada just misses out, and we've got a month without having any vaccines delivered. Wow. So we started okay. I think we were the second or third country in the world to administer one, but now we're way down because they just haven't been here, but also because there's this blame shifting between the national government who bring them in and the provincial government who have this responsibility to administer them. So it actually means I'm nowhere near getting a vaccine.
Right.
We're talking about April for people like myself who are considered high risk but not front line and not very high risk. I think the categorization is correct because we're pretty strong at screening people. You know, my exposure would be moderate. Okay. But nevertheless, the chances of me as a primary healthcare practitioner, direct access getting a vaccine. And that's me here up the street. It'll be different in a different regional district. You know, the next block of 750,000 people,
wow,
their practitioners would get something much sooner.
okay.
So it's, yeah, you know, it's all these nuances, I guess, that you got to manage. So
yeah,
it's here. People are worried by it. It's therefore made things quite false for us, because they've got all these great services and infrastructure around, but nothing's open until only this weekend or early part of last week. And how right or wrong it is, I don't know. But, you know, for me, the people that need to be targeted with vaccines are the ones that are going to be transmitting the condition. You know, it's a very emotive, might be an emotive comment, but it's also an issue that's difficult to talk about in the open, because it is controversial. But the most of the vaccines here, 85%, have gone to long-term aged care residents who, of course, are at risk, but they're not out in the community.
Yeah.
Whereas if the people who visited those environments were the ones that were vaccinated, then you're not going to be bringing it into there, and therefore there'll be more vaccines available. But it's these conversations that don't tend to get aired, because the political parties here are pretty closely aligned. So there's not a lot of to and fro. It's not anything like as entertaining as the House of Commons or the Senate in Australia. Everyone's all a bit too nicey, and we better not go there because we don't want to upset people.
Right. Okay.
It's funny. Yeah.
Oh. Gosh. Good for you. So you're surviving it, really. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's all part of life building, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah.
Good man. Would you have any kind of top tips on if anybody was thinking about, you know, working overseas or?
Do it.
Yeah.
Honestly, absolutely do it. You know, when we left Australia, I went through the exercise of writing down 2 columns, the reasons to leave Australia from the situation we were in and spend whatever it's going to be, 5, 6, 7 years traveling around, versus the reasons not to. And there was a huge list in the pragmatic column of reasons not to. Yeah. And you could think of anything possible, because it's too hard, and uprooting your stability and all that stuff. And in the positive do it column was your heart says so. And I didn't want to get to retirement at 70 and think, right, I'm a bit burnt out, I'm not sure how long I'm going to last, but I want to go and see the world and do it then. I wanted to do it this way around. So absolutely do it, particularly as a primary care practitioner, because you've got a portable skill and a portable qualification. I mean, to be fair, I won't wish to do it again just because of the medical registration bureaucracy that you have to go through each time. But aside from that, actually having the privilege to treat people and understand people and cultures and communities, because the conditions are the same, the patients are pretty much the same, and of course, you know, we've handpicked the environments we've picked because communication is so big for us, and you know, I wouldn't feel I would offer much of a service in a foreign language, so we handpicked where we went. But when you're in that consulting room with your patients, it feels just the same. You know, the interaction is just the same. And that's always your bedrock. But then to be able to stand back and have a look at the context to which people consult for healthcare and what their expectations are, there's no way I would have been able to have as broad a view as I think I can take if I'd only been in 1 or 2 environments. So absolutely, I'd do it again. And I guess the rider on that is, yeah, of course you do it, but you have to, everyone has to, I believe, has to have stability behind it. So keeping, or never forget your friends, never forget your mates, never forget your family, of course. And thankfully, and partly because of the pandemic, this sort of stuff, the electronic communication, the real-time virtual communication is so good.
Amazing.
That it's not far off actually spending time with people. So never lose sight of your mates, That's so crucial, I think.
Yeah.
I'll do it again.
Good. Really lovely to hear that. Do you kind of set time aside to stay in touch with people? Yeah, just for family and overseas friends.
Yeah, we do. Can sometimes be a bit of a challenge, but to be honest, it's just as effective almost when you think of someone. You just flick them something on WhatsApp or Messenger or whatever, and you just have that bit of banter. You find something funny, just like we do.
Yeah.
You send, the boys are like that. Send that through, and you get stuff back. So yeah.
That's nice.
When we're sat watching the footy on the telly from time to time, you don't actually see too much of the game anymore because you spend most of the time on your WhatsApp trying to comment on what's going on. It gives you sore thumbs, I tell you.
Fantastic. Yeah. Oh, that's great, man. Yeah.
Yeah, no regrets. You can't have regrets in my view. You have challenges, but take a risk, I always think. I remember a long time ago when I was, God knows, maybe not that long, maybe 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Started to drift and think about, 15, 20 years time, the kids will be doing this, we'll have a bit of freedom, our finances will be like this. And I started to think ahead, and I look back, and after that, the rest is history. I got divorced, and I lived in 3 separate countries, and all that stuff. Nothing's set in stone, and I'm just making too concrete a plan too far ahead. Is yes, you need of course you need stability in your bedrock, like we said, but looking too far ahead and looking for, I guess, comfort and reassurance, then should, for me, make you then think, oh, what's missing? Actually go and always test the excitement, always take a risk, always test an opportunity, providing you've got people behind you who can just keep you straight.
Yeah.
You can't do it on your own, but always take your opportunities because, you're a long time deed.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's good life advice, actually, mate. I like that. That's good. Yeah, that's good.
You learn it, don't you? And I've made plenty of mistakes. Believe me, plenty of mistakes. One thing I have learnt in the last year is it's still the hardest job in the world and the most rewarding job in the world, at least for those of us that have had the privileges to be a parent. And to do it again with a 14-year gap, and more importantly, to do it again at different times of this fella's life, but with a different mum and in a very different environment, and therefore different expectations. That's the hardest thing going. It really is. When you talk about mistakes you've made, you go back at the end of the day and you think, I really shouldn't have done that way, and I shouldn't. Yes, it's rewarding, and the best thing about kids is that they bounce back and they're malleable. Mm-hmm. But you learn a lot about yourself by what's reflected back at you as a parent at the end of the day, I tell you.
My best, yeah.
Anyway.
Have you got any kind of, I don't know, words of wisdom or hellos to the guys back here in the UK?
Look, I think of you guys, honestly, a lot. And words of wisdom, I'm not sure it's my place to give words of wisdom. I've pontificated on top of a soapbox for probably about half an hour. But we would love to see as many people who ever would like to come and visit you. We've got a stack of room. There's lots to show you. And even if you don't come and visit us, just take the opportunity. It's not far away. Take the opportunity to come and have a look at Canada, but just come and have a look at it from a different culture and a different perspective. You know, when you sort of reflect on your day, or when I reflect on my day here and the differences, it actually reinforces and reminds me of what a great setup you guys have got through Valens, I must say.
Really?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
And if you'd have asked me that right at the beginning, I don't think I'd have said the same.
Okay.
But when I look back at the size of the organisation, but how tight a ship was run, and how many people are involved, and this bit became apparent to me quite early in the piece, how dedicated to their individual roles and their team roles, the ancillary staff, the admin guys, the managerial guys, the receptionists, the professionalism of those guys is huge.
It is, isn't it?
You know, I remember when Sandra left and Mooney made a bit of a speech, about Sandra did things well and looked after the patient. Yeah. And the guys at Valens, huge organisation though it is, there is still a real pride in your work. Yeah. And that comes from leadership, and it comes from the whole breadth of you guys, your educational focus, and Mooney and John's nous, and actually putting the organisation out, and for good reason, therefore attracting a well-deserved status. And then the likes of Becky and Sarah, and the patient care, and the reflection that you get from patients as to how well they're cared for and looked after. And if you ever want a laugh and a smile, go next door and go see Jazz for an hour. It's a great breadth of team, and I think your role modelling in a tough environment in different ways is actually manifest and demonstrated through what a great job the staff actually do for the organisation as a whole. It's a tough environment, I must say, the NHS. It is a tough environment. But in terms, I guess, of expectations and actually what you have to do, what needs doing and needs managing. But the way it's actually done at Valens, when I'm sort of thinking to myself here, being on my own, the registered nurse has just moved on. We're in between nurse practitioners. We had two great physician's assistants who had to leave for all sorts of reasons. The teamwork and the group, the bonding within Valens and Brockwell is really strong. And I don't know, even for me, for just over 12 months, it became too easy to take that for granted. So I think just, remember that. There may be frustrations about having to do this and having to check these boxes and having to meet these targets and having to manage a huge patient load. But the way that it's done in a big team effectively is so impressive. It really is. So I miss you all.
It's lovely to hear that. Well, I'll certainly pass that on to the guys, and maybe they might actually hear some of this chat we've had.
As you choose. More than happy, Barney, really.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and look, I look forward to keeping in touch with you guys, Will and Simon and Dave and Andy.
Yeah, education guys.
So I'll try and organise my shifts. It'll be a bit easier now, so I can put my head in and share a bit of wisdom and learn a bit more from you, Mo.
Thank you. That would be so great. We'll be in touch about dates for that. Yeah, that'd be great.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, so nice to catch up. Thanks so much for letting us know how things are for you. And sorry for Claire's situation just for now, but
thank you.
Hopefully that she's she'll get something that will be maybe just right for her. And Seth, great. I think I could see that boy becoming pretty good with his ice hockey. He's got the right attitude for it, isn't he? He's a full contact kind of guy. So that's
It's if you wanted me finally just to sum up a Canadian personality.
Yeah, do it.
I mean, we're early doors, but what we've learned, Canadians are very polite. They're bloody good at bureaucracy, way too good. It's just prohibitive. They try their best to be relaxed, but unfortunately they become endearingly disorganized somehow. It just, you know. But the two exceptions to that are you give them an ice hockey stick, or you put them behind the wheel of a car, and they're completely different beasts.
Okay.
You know, they're feisty and aggressive, and you know, well, yeah, you don't dawdle on a Canadian road. They have this weird thing where you can turn right at a red light as long as it's safe. If there's nothing coming, and turning right is the same as turning left in the UK.
Oh, I'm with you. Yeah.
So you can turn right if there's nothing coming. But it took us about a week or two to work this out. And we had one or two Canadians get out of their cars and pull out to remind us how the road rules worked here. So put them behind the wheel of a car, give them an ice hockey stick. They're crazy.
Wow.
Crazy. Anyway, crazy Canucks.
That's great.
I'll learn more.
Do it. Well done. It's nice to hear the cross-cultural experience going well for you.
Yeah, I have been accused of being South African frequently, Irish occasionally,
Really?
and most offensively, I was accused of being a Geordie last week.
Well, I'm sure your in-laws would be very pleased about that.
Yeah, I'm sure they would too, mate, if they ever found out.
Fantastic. Well, Nige, just lovely to catch up with you, man, and really good to see you. We'll be in touch.
Love to.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I'll catch you real soon.
Love
to everyone.
Yeah, love to go and Seth as well.
Cheers, man.
All the best. Bye for now. Cheers.
See ya.
See ya. Bye-bye.